So, here we go.
It was filled with childish frustrations and complexes. The police were searching for James Thomas.
Hello, hello.
Hi.
Let me get the tunes back on. You're listening to Midnight Movie Gang. I'm your host, LC.
And I'm Courtney.
And I was going to say, I'm Courtney. You're LC tonight. Hello, I'm LC. My pronouns are he, him. If this is the first episode listening.
I'm Courtney. My pronouns are they, them.
Yep. And this is a podcast where we talk about movies and kind of things related to, cinema and whatnot. And this is episode 3. It was supposed to technically be episode 1. The plan originally was for this episode to be episode 1.
Well, things change.
Yeah, exactly. It actually, the whole order flipped. Because, no one will save you ended up being episode 2. And then Old Boy ended up being, episode 1. And then Old Boy ended up being episode 2, which I wanted to be episode 3. So it's all, but you know what? Here we are. And I'm excited. So today, I guess primarily, just reactionarily wise, we're going to be talking a lot about this movie that we just watched, this 2016 Canadian Lovecraftian horror film called The Void. But I think also we're going to be talking a bit about John Carpenter, The Thing specifically, and kind of just practical effects in horror and stuff and creatures versus kind of CGI like we see now. But yeah, we just finished watching this movie, The Void, and
literally 10 minutes ago.
Literally 10 minutes ago, we got some ice cream, and I think it was the right call not eating main dinner with this movie.
Yeah, you said the movie was gonna be gory, so I wanted to eat dinner beforehand.
Yeah, I didn't realize how particularly gory it was. Let's talk about what teas we're drinking.
Yes. So today, I have a new mug that I got at a craft market that we went to last weekend.
It's a very pretty mug.
It has a cicada on it, actually specifically a Brood X cicada on it. And the tea I'm drinking today is Dynasty brand Jasmine Green Tea.
Delicious. And I'm drinking ginger tea. What's the company?
That's Yogi.
Yogi ginger tea, which supports healthy digestion. It's caffeine free. Yogi ginger tea. I love ginger tea. I
hate it.
It helps whenever I have a headache.
Yeah.
Did I tell you the story about why I started drinking ginger tea? Because I was going to see in college. I was going to see with a friend of mine. We were going to see the movie Shazam.
I do remember this story.
Yeah, and I got a really, really bad migraine before going to see it. And my friend was like, "You want to cancel?" And I was like, "No, I really want to see Shazam."
I think that it's so funny. Out of every movie that you'd muscle through a migraine for, it's Shazam.
I was really looking forward to seeing Shazam.
No, that's fair. But it's Shazam. I know. I think it's a fine movie, but it's not Star Wars.
Yeah. Anyway, so I was really committed to seeing Shazam, so we went. And then when we got into the movie theater, I was in visible pain. It was a really bad migraine. I was sweating and I was.
Oh yeah, I get migraines all the time.
It was rough, and the girl behind the counter could clearly see that I was in pain. I was telling her, yeah, I got a headache. She's like, "Oh, you should get some ginger tea. It really helps." And they had hot tea at the theater, and she
I didn't know theaters had hot tea.
Yeah, it's a pretty common thing. They all have hot think when I worked at movie theater in high school, we had hot tea behind the counter. It was actually the cheapest at my theater I worked at. It was the cheapest thing to get. I think it was $2.50 for a cup of tea.
That's still kind of expensive, but that's fair.
Yeah, I also think there was some.
But yeah, the ginger tea solved your problem, right?
Yeah, no, instant relief.
Yeah.
So whenever I feel like it's got to be something similar. There's got to be a similar tie-in there as to why I get brain freeze so bad.
I don't know what's going on in your brain. I'm not a neurologist.
My sinuses and just the inside of my head is fucking messed up. Anywho, so let's talk about the movie, The Void.
Yeah.
Do you want to summarize kind of the basic synopsis of The Void?
Yeah.
There isn't really a whole lot to it.
Yeah. So basically, this cop finds a man on the side of the street who is injured, and he brings him, and it's like a small town cop kind of situation.
Small town, rural.
Yeah. So he brings the injured man to the hospital, which is coincidentally the small, half burned down, like rinkety ass.
Yeah. There's literally like 4 people working there.
Yeah, this like teeny tiny hospital in this teeny tiny rural area, and it coincidentally is the hospital that his nurse wife, who he is estranged from, like they're separated or something, she works there as a nurse, and he brings this injured man there, and as soon as he brings the injured man there, a bunch of weird stuff happens. There's some culty aspects. There's basically they end up trapped in the hospital with some other characters. There's a pregnant teenager. There's and her grandpa, and there's a couple of other side characters. But basically, they're trapped in this hospital, and they have to go into the creepy basement where there's like demonic stuff going on, to try to find a way to get out of this situation, because the hospital is like surrounded by cultists.
Yeah, surrounded by these cultists in white robes.
It's like an existential culty, voidy kind of.
There's big sci-fi elements in here for sure.
Yeah.
I was reading some of the Letterboxd reviews before watching this movie.
That's dangerous.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to see what the vibe was. I enjoyed it a lot more than a lot of the Letterboxd people did, for probably different reasons than some of the Letterboxd people.
Yeah, I mean, I never know where my reviews are going to stack up against the other Letterboxd users. I feel like most of the time I have completely different vibes than a lot of the consensus on Letterboxd.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the reviews basically compared it to The Thing, to Event Horizon, which we haven't watched Event Horizon.
I have not seen that one. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I've talked. It's kind of a thing where it's kind of like these astronauts find an abandoned ship in space and they go check it out, and there's demons on the ship. So it's which sounds cooler than it is.
Yeah.
Because honestly, there isn't really a whole lot of demons in that movie, but
that's kind of lame.
Yeah, to each their own. It really blue balls you, that one. There isn't but yeah, no, and basically, yeah. So in this movie, the cultists are outside, and then within the hospital, as they kind of go deeper and try to move around the hospital, certain people get possessed, it seems, and there's some creatures, and kind of most notably some crazy good practical effects that come out of nowhere in this movie. I feel it's kind of funny because the whole movie has it's a fun, I like cheap kind of sci-fi horror movies like this. When we started up, this movie was reminding me a lot of this movie that I watched a few times in high school called Extraterrestrial, and it's kind of like a Sci-Fi Channel level horror movie about these 5 college students go to a cabin in the woods, and they get abducted by aliens. Aliens start fucking with them and stuff. And it's kind of that level. But then just the practical effects of this movie are just great. And they take you off guard.
Yeah.
As to how great they are. But yeah, so did you like it? How'd you feel about it?
I really liked it. I love practical effects. It's one of my favorite features of a good movie is practical effects. I liked how kind of off the wall the story was. I felt like there wasn't a whole lot of character development in the story, but I didn't need there to be.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't so much for me about the individual characters. It was just about the whole thing itself. And I looked at some of the Letterboxd reviews after watching it a few minutes ago, and the main complaint I was noticing was that people were like, there is no character development, which I totally get, but
there isn't in the thing really either.
Right. I just like a good it was just a good gory existential horror movie.
Yeah.
I didn't need more from individual characters because I think the story itself did enough for me without there having to be anything else.
Yeah, it's a very fun B movie.
Yeah, I didn't have to feel connected to the characters in order to care about it just because it was so crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is the exact kind of movie that I would like I would watch in middle school, like after my mom went to sleep, and like I'd either like pirate it online, or like if we had like a DVD of something, I'd like watch it, like something like when I was in high school, it'd be a movie like Species or Tremors or something, where like I would like watch it really late, and like I wouldn't want my mom to know, because she's gonna be like, you're just gonna get scared if you watch it, and you're not gonna sleep well. I'm like, no, I'm gonna watch it, you know. Like that's very much like this kind of vibe, and I love these kind of movies, just like really simple same thing, like it's similar to the movie we watched a few weeks ago, Altered, which is a fun movie about these 4 redneck guys that kidnap an alien. Anyway, yeah, but it reminded me, like, in the same vein as, like, Altered, that we watched a few weeks ago, where it's, like, a low-budget thing, and I'm looking, so, remember I said during the movie, I looked at the Wikipedia page, and it says that the budget was only $82,000, which is nuts, is nothing for a movie. But, looking at the production thing on it, it says that the creature effects and the special effects, they did, like, a Indiegogo campaign just for the creature effects, and then the rest of the movie's funding was through traditional channels. So like more than that's just for the special effects, which
that still feels low.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, when you think about it, there aren't necessarily a whole lot. There are really kind of like 3 big effects scenes in this movie, which were, well, like, slight spoilers for like the story, but basically it's like there's like a small scene in a hallway with a creature. And then there's a scene around the middle of the movie with a bunch of creatures. And then there's a big creature at the end. There's like the baby, you know?
Yeah, I mean, like, I feel like there's a lot of little creature scenes. Like, you have the Beverly creature early on and stuff.
Yeah. Oh, the shot. Remember the shot early on in the movie where she's on the ground and there's like spider legs coming out of her mouth? Yeah. That was so The Thing.
Yeah.
That was like
especially with the way that they were moving really erratically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which, for The Thing, I feel like, to me, it feels like in The Thing, the way that the creature's tentacles move is more a feature of like, this is as good as puppeteering could be for that. But for this movie, it seemed intentional. Like, it seemed like intentionally replicating that.
Yeah, just because they were, like, harkening back to, because you can definitely tell it's, like, harkening back to 80s movies. Even down to the whole thing of, like, for a minute, we thought this movie was a period piece.
Yeah, because the computer, there were, like, first of all, the hospital had paper files.
Yeah. It could just be a shitty hospital.
It could just be a shitty hospital, but even in, like, human hospitals, like, paper records aren't as common anymore, especially like now. But there was also like the big boxy computer and stuff.
Yeah, this movie came out in 2016, by the way, which so
right.
They would have modern computers and shit. Yeah.
Right, and we also didn't see any cell phones. No one had a cell phone, so it still technically could have been a period piece.
Yeah. I'd say the only other things to look at, really, when I try to figure out when a movie takes place, I always look at the cars. And
there weren't that many.
And the clothes, and most of the characters in this movie were in like uniforms. Were either in like scrubs or like the cop uniforms. But the only car I think we see in this movie is the cop car. Right,
and it just looked like it didn't look like a super modern one.
Yeah,
but it didn't look old either.
But yeah, once again, it could harken back to like that, like. It's in the middle of nowhere, so it's possible.
So they don't have like the Ford Explorers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That would definitely be a tip off. My iPad's a 5% battery. But yeah, no, like as far as the story, I kind of agree with you. I think it's a good setup, and then I also think they give you a nice amount of like detail to know about the characters.
Yeah.
Like knowing that the main cop. Daniel and Allison having their marriage, and like how they had a kid that it was implied that
died during childbirth,
and then
or died before childbirth.
Yeah,
it they didn't really say if she had ever actually given birth to a live baby or not.
Yeah.
Anyway, the way that the doctor described it was that the baby's umbilical cord wrapped around its own neck, which could happen before it was born, or could have happened like during
point is, they lost a child
Right.
before it was born.
And that is presumably the reason why they are
On the outs.
Yeah.
And then what else? Yeah, no, just like a nice setup. I mean, from the very beginning, when they introduced like the pregnant character, and they're like,
that was Chekhov's pregnant woman.
Chekhov's pregnancy, yeah. And
right.
Just like, it's
You're like, that
point.
baby is coming during this.
Yeah. I thought it was a pretty cool twist, her being a cultist.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty cool.
So, originally when we meet, what is her name? Maggie?
Maggie is the pregnant girl.
So originally when we meet Maggie, the pregnant character, we assume that she's a teenager. Her exact age is not specified. Probably she looks like 16, 17.
Yeah.
She is already at the hospital when the cop pulls up with the injured man.
They are the only people in the waiting room.
Right. Her and her grandfather are the only people in the waiting room in the hospital.
It was
and
we thought that the grandpa was the dad for a second. We were like, hold on, like the
we were
father
really
of the child.
We were really concerned about like what this man's interest was in this child and her child. But he is just her grandfather, drives her to the hospital because the baby seems like it is coming soon, and she seems to be in a little bit of distress, but not enough to be a real emergency. But we are not told at all anything about like the possible father, and like they
don't even hint like as to like who it could be.
No, I just assume, and I feel like that's on purpose because like I mean a pregnant teenager, like there's a number of reasons why a teenager might be pregnant. But as far as like who the father could be, and so I feel like you don't really need an explanation at that point because you're like, oh, it's probably some other kid, you know. And I like that they don't even imply anything because it didn't occur to me at all to think about the father of that child because I just assumed it was another 17-year-old. Like I just assumed it was another kid she goes to school with or whatever. But later on in the movie, you find out that she's one of the cultists, and she kills her grandfather, and it's not very clear if she herself is dead.
Yeah.
Because before this point, she was in major distress with the baby.
Yeah.
Because at one point, while everything else is going down in the movie, she is saying that she's in a lot of pain, and there's a lot of blood. Like, it looks like something is going wrong with the baby.
Yeah.
And
I think the baby was already starting to transform at this point.
Right. So it's unclear as to if she's dead when she kills her grandfather, like if she is, because there's some demonic, like, undead things going on in this hospital. So it's pretty unclear, but she kills her grandfather and says to the assistant, like medical assistant or like, you know, I don't know what her role is.
She's not a
like
nurse.
She's like a candy striper.
This says intern
Kim.
Intern Kim, Nurse Beverly, pregnant patient.
Yeah. So Kim, the intern, is wholly unprepared to deal with any type of emergency situation because she's just an intern. And she, Maggie, the pregnant girl, tells her that the baby is the doctor's baby.
Yeah.
And that, like, basically that she's a cultist, and she joins him. And
the doctor,
in the basement.
The doctor is revealed to be the villain. Like, the doctor seemingly gets killed off early. And then it's revealed that like he gets resurrected by the demonic energy, and it's revealed that he's kind of been doing this all along. And the fact he's been like running weird experiments on people
to try to basically achieve immortality because his own daughter died young.
Yeah.
And suffering the loss of his daughter kind of made him go nuts a little, especially because he is a doctor and couldn't save her life. And we're not told what she died of. I'm assuming it was either an accident or like a rare child illness. But basically he feels a lot of guilt and shame about the fact that he couldn't save her. So he does these crazy experiments on people to try to achieve immortality, and he does. Yeah,
like he basically bringing people back to life, their corpses, but they also are kind of, it's really cool. Like, it's a combination of like zombie
Yeah.
Where like people, like it's these corpses brought back to life, but then they're also transformed into these creatures. And like, I loved the shot, like kind of in the latter half of the movie, where like they find the room full of the creatures.
Yeah.
And like one of them is like basically stabbing its head against this pole coming out of the wall.
Yeah.
And like it looks so crazy because it's like a real, I guess it's like a mannequin head that's you know, it's all gooey and like love it.
Yeah, I really liked that scene because previously the doctor had Dr. Powell.
Richard Powell.
Yeah, Dr. Powell had said that these were all of his experiments, and they had all tried to die and wanted to die, but he wouldn't let them. And then it shows us that scene of that one, like, putting its head repeatedly into, like, the pipe. And that scene was just kind of crazy because none of the creatures talked. Or, like it was, they were not human. Mm-hmm. But you could tell that they didn't want to be alive. Like, they didn't want to be like this. And just the imagery of, like, a creature, like, futilely trying to kill itself over and over and over, to the point where it had, like, a hole in its head. Multiple holes in its head, but couldn't achieve that, was really haunting. Mm-hmm. It
was Sid's room in Toy Story times 10 million.
Right, it was like the non-kid version of that.
Yeah.
Some of the things that I really liked about that idea in particular is that, first of all, just like the lengths that men will go before going to therapy is kind of crazy to me.
The whole thing is like it's the doctor just trying to like
bring his daughter back
and just deal with that whole thing. And
right.
Yeah.
Like he would rather torture an unknown amount of people than just go to therapy to deal with the loss of his daughter. Like, I'm in no way minimizing such a loss because, like, you know, parents are never supposed to lose their kids. It's supposed to be the other way around. But you gotta be doing something else. You can't be out here disemboweling people to try to achieve immortality to bring your daughter back.
No.
And I also
overkill.
Yeah, and I also understand the feeling of powerlessness because, like, he is a doctor. If anyone could have helped his daughter, it would be him, and he couldn't. And
did they ever say what she died of?
No, they didn't. But he does talk about how it feels to be that powerless, and, like, if you could cure anything, wouldn't you? And, like, when he was saying those things, it was making me think about, like, the limits that we have as far as we can't achieve immortality, and I don't feel like it's ethical to try. Mm-hmm. Because if we all lived forever, there just wouldn't be enough of anything anymore. Yeah. And, like, there's a lot of I mean, I'm in grad school for in the medical field, and so I think about this a lot, about medical advancements and how amazing it is that we can cure diseases, and how amazing it is that we're working on cures and assistant medical devices and treatments that help extend life. But at the end of the day, there has to be a limit. Mm-hmm. Like, we can't just make everyone and everything live forever, and it's just not ethical to be trying to achieve that, when in my mind, the real goal is to alleviate suffering, not to extend life forever.
You ever have I told you about the show Altered Carbon? Yeah, where it's like the people live forever because they can just, like, the rich people just make clones of their bodies, like of their younger selves, and just keep uploading their brains into the younger version. That's crazy. Yeah, it's messed up. And it just, in the show, it just leads to, like, basically, like, rich people just kind of being insane because they're, like, thousands of years old. Right. And basically, how do I put it? They get bored really easily.
Right.
So like they just do insane shit. Like there's like in that show there's like a basically like a brothel type thing where they literally go in and murder the prostitute. Like that's the whole thing. It's like it's a murder house. You go in to murder a prostitute, and then the prostitutes, they get their consciousness uploaded into new bodies afterwards. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's like the whole thing. And it's like, yeah, for like, you know, people just go crazy.
It's interesting to me, because one of the tenets of being a doctor, for no matter what your specialty is going to be, one of the tenets of being a doctor is first do no harm. Mm-hmm. And that is in the oath that any doctor takes, is like above all else, we're doing no harm. And so the idea of inflicting pain, not knowing that it's for a better cause, is crazy to me. And also inflicting pain and doing so with the expectation of like, oh, well, they'll be immortal though. Like, the question you have to ask is that better? Because for, like, in this movie, for the creatures he made, they all want to die.
Yeah.
Like, none of them want to live in their bodies. So you have to assume that, like, they are suffering in there. Either, whether it's physical pain, mental pain, both. Mm-hmm. Like, all of those creatures are so messed up.
Did it give you any of the, I know we've talked about this in movies before, that, like, that feeling like Tusk, or I know you have a thing in movies or like in media where it's like someone is being, if another person is kind of like forcing some kind of surgery or some kind of thing, like in the movie Tusk, the doctor guy is trying to forcibly transform Justin Long into a walrus, and I know that like super skeeves you out. Did you get any of that in this movie? Or
no? I have a weird thing with some movies. It mostly happens in horror movies, such as in Tusk, where
what was the other one that was really
so there's Tusk, because he's being transformed into a walrus. There's Sorry to Bother You,
that was
which is there's like people turning into horses.
Spoiler alert for both those movies.
And then the Human Centipede, which like we all know what that's about. All three of those movies were movies that, well, we did end up finishing Sorry to Bother You.
Yeah.
But the other two movies I could not finish, because they give me like a very visceral like ick, basically, is the best way I can describe it. But I'm like deathly, like it bothers me to the point of real nausea to watch that kind of thing. And I think for me that is mostly because first of all, it's the against the will thing, but there's a lot of against the will stuff in horror movies anyway.
In general, yeah. That's kind of the basis of most horror, really.
Right, but I think it's the animal part.
Yeah.
Is that like being transformed into like an animal, or like I think
that makes a lot of sense.
I think most of it is just like having human consciousness inside of something that's not human.
Yeah.
Like really bothers me.
Yeah, I get that. Whereas like this
but I
movie,
don't get that. I don't get that in movies like The Fly, because he's doing it to himself.
Yeah, he fucked around and found out by himself. It is of his. No one forced him to get in the pod, and like no one. Yeah, right. That's like a big element of it. And yeah, in this movie, it's like everyone's just being transformed into creatures.
Right.
And it's like there's whole levels above just that kind of basic thing.
Right. And this movie, in particular, the creatures, while they're creepy, they're for sure creepy, and they creeped me out, and like the visuals were very visceral. It's more, the visuals to me were more exorcism demon than they were animal.
The supernatural element was a big thing. Because like at the very least, in something like Tusk or Sorry to Bother You, I mean, hopefully those things won't happen. But like the scenarios in those movies and like the what happens in those movies is a lot closer to what could happen in reality than something like this, where it's like, we're going to open a portal to the Upside Down. Which, speaking of the Upside Down, one of the reviews on Letterboxd said that like this movie inspired some of the later seasons of Stranger Things.
I could really see that when we watched this.
100%, especially because like what the Doctor looked like at the end of this movie,
Pure Vecna.
just straight up Vecna. Vecna looked cooler though.
Well, yeah, but
Scarier,
also
sexier voice.
True.
But and then also like the dimension. They go to like at the end of this movie, you see, and it's probably the worst looking visuals in the movie.
It absolutely is, yeah.
But it's just because it's like it's a big CGI environment. Like it's just main cop man and
his nurse wife Allison.
Are like in the other dimension where and it's kind of like just a bunch of big pyramids, and it's like Lovecraftian other world.
And there's like thunder. It looked a lot like when we see the Mind Flayer in the Upside Down.
I feel like we didn't need that ending. I want to talk about negatives of the movie soon, but like that was definitely one of the things where it's like we didn't need that. Throughout the movie, you kind of get little flashes of like space and like some like fleshy gooey stuff, and like I feel like that was enough to kind of get the sense. And then seeing just the portal at the end, I feel like you didn't need to actually go into the world.
Yeah, especially because the Doctor says like, come join Allison, and I feel like I could have assumed that he did without having to see it, especially because it'd almost
be kind of scary if you didn't know what happened after he jumped
right
in.
I think that would have improved it a lot for me. I also think that there were so many strong visuals in the movie that to end on that CGI one sucked.
Yeah. I thought it still left me unsettled because I don't even know what the relevance of it was, but it just the credits opened up with this really creepy kind of like lo-fi folky guitar song.
Hated it.
Yeah, just like I don't even know what the context of it was, but it was like, ooh, it just sent. The atmosphere was really good. It was it was a really nice little sci-fi horror movie. But in terms of talking about complaints, which I do have, a lot of complaints. I think the parts where the performances are most good in this movie, for me, all have to do with when there are like the creatures and practical effects, because, and this is more of like a comment to the practical effects, because there's actually physical creatures there. I'm sure it made it an easier job for the actors to react to what's going on.
That's true, yeah.
Because like they actually look like at the end when like the big baby monster thing pops out.
Hate that thing.
It was so scary looking, and like the actors, you could tell were like when it was like coming down the hallway at them, they were like, nope. But outside of that, like most of the performances are like just really flat throughout the whole thing. They're not the worst I've ever seen, but like there really was kind of nothing going on, and like performance wise. And then like I thought the main cop guy and Allison and the Doctor were all solid in terms of like their motivations and backstories.
Right.
Everyone else though, like the two like redneck guys who were chasing,
the father and son.
Yeah, the father and son who were like chasing after the drug addict man from the beginning, and like they just like they didn't really give their characters anything, and then I felt their performances weren't really anything. I mean, but it's like in these kind of movies, I'm not really there for the characters, you know?
Right.
Like
I feel similarly about the character performances. I think that in general they weren't the strongest. One thing that I don't think I needed at all was the father and son, to be honest.
Yeah, you could have cut them just straight out.
Because when they first show up and like come into the hospital, they're super hostile, and I didn't follow why they were there at first. Like I know we see them in the opening very briefly. But I was like lost about why they were there, and I don't think that they were necessarily important to the plot. My other big character complaint is that I don't feel like people freaked out enough.
Yeah.
Like because my first complaint was that when the cop first sees the first creature, he's not nearly as freaked out as I think he should be.
Yeah.
And then also later on, when the father, the son, and the cop are all in the basement and they're in that room with all of the creatures, they're not nearly as freaked out as they should be by all of these like all of this creepy ass shit. Like I don't understand how they could possibly just be in this room and not having complete meltdowns about how scary it is.
Yeah, I feel like something like The Thing did it really well.
I think so too.
The first time they see anything, the Thing in The Thing,
yeah,
when it's got the dogs and stuff, and like they're like frozen there,
right?
Like just in shock and horror,
And
at it.
And the thing too is I know that none of these three men have ever seen anything nearly as horrifying as that. Like this cop is like some rural ass cop.
Yeah.
The worst thing that man has probably ever seen is a car accident. You know what I mean? Like there's no way that man has ever seen anything as terrifying as that. And then also at the end of the movie when he kills his wife basically because she is like a source of the demon stuff, like the doctor has transformed her. And I made a joke to you because I was like, this man didn't even shed a tear. He didn't even react to the fact that he has to kill his wife.
Yeah.
And he axes her too. He doesn't even, it's not even like a gunshot. You know what I mean? Like it's not even like a cold, like from a distance gunshot.
Well, I'm not gonna waste the bullets.
This man is hacking his wife to pieces. And we don't see it. We see it through like the glass of a door. But he doesn't. He hits her with that axe multiple times, and he like must decimate her body. And I turned to you and I said, I would hope that you would have a little bit more emotion about having to kill me.
I'd be crying the whole
because
time.
If I turned into a scary demon machine thing.
She was like a big squid.
Yeah.
Well, it was kind of just like she gave birth to.
Right.
We didn't see what she gave birth to exactly, but like earlier we saw her belly all.
I think it was
crazy.
just tentacles. But if that happened to me, I would want you to kill me because that's horrible. But also, as my future husband, I would want you to at least like shed one tear. Like, for the love of God. Like, this man just is like, all right, gotta kill her. And I feel like that is crazy. So overall, like, there were a few moments in this movie that the lack of reactions by some of these characters really took me out of it.
I would have had Bert kill you.
That's fair.
We were joking around the whole time. If anybody out there has seen the movie Tremors, any kind of like monster zombie apocalypse situation, you want Burt Gummer on your squad because he'd survive, he'd get all that shit done. But yeah, so the lack of reactions. I'd say the performances really, and then some of the plot points being kind of confusing. Like I kind of had a hard time with figuring out why those two guys were there at the beginning.
I also feel like there were too many old white men in this movie. Yeah.
I feel like you could have taken out a few characters for sure.
Like the state trooper. Yeah. Could have taken him out.
Oh, yeah. I almost forgot that.
Literally forgot about him.
Yeah. What purpose did he even serve? He took away...
He was just an asshole for a minute, and then he died.
He took away Mr. Copman's gun, but then Copman got his gun back real quick.
Right.
So, I don't know. But yeah, no. Fun movie. The creatures were scary. I kind of wanted to pick your brain a little bit about They Live. If you're done talking about The Void, you want to give your rating for The Void, and we can talk about They Live a little bit.
Yeah.
Cool.
What rating system are we using for The Void?
I'd say let's just use the letterbox. We'll just do 1 to 5.
I gave it a 4 out of 5 because I really liked the practical effects. Really carried the movie for me. I just love practical effects. I love that Star Wars shit, that The Thing shit. I love that. Give me some puppets.
Yeah. I personally, this might sound harsh, I'm probably going to give the movie, I haven't put it on Letterboxd yet, I'm probably going to give it a 3.5. But if I could just give the practical, like 6.5. Yeah. 6. Yeah, 6.5. The effects are really, really incredible for a movie with a budget this small, and it's so creative. But that was really like
that was the driving thing.
That was the driving thing about it, and it's definitely the reason to watch it. Outside of that, it was just kind of meh. Anyway, yeah. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about They Live, which I had I had a whole Google Doc prepared. They Live is a 1988 American science fiction action horror film directed by Mr. John Carpenter, who he directed The Thing, and then after watching They Live, I looked at his filmography and I was like, oh damn, we've seen a lot more John Carpenter movies than I realized. He also directed Halloween and Starman. Starman is not a horror film, but it's a movie I really enjoy. A lot of these I still want to see. He made an Invisible Man movie. You should check that out. But yeah, so do you want to describe the premise of They Live?
Yeah. So basically, there's this drifter man who reminds me a lot of the main guy in The Thing. I feel like John Carpenter has a type.
Yeah. The men that he likes. Dirty blonde.
He
buff
loves a dirty blonde buff man.
Yeah.
But anyway, this man is like kind of a drifter. He is looking for work.
Because work in his town is dried up.
Right.
Closed the mines or whatever.
Right. The implication is that the economy kind of sucks.
He comes
relatable.
He comes to LA.
So he comes to LA and he gets some work at a construction site, and he meets a nice man who he has a ton of sexual chemistry with.
Keith David?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they wanted to fuck.
They should have fucked.
Throughout this whole movie.
I know they did between scenes for
100%.
sure.
When they went to that hotel room.
Right.
Definitely.
So this drifter man, he's credited as Nada. It's
Yeah.
Roddy Piper.
I believe that's the character's name in the original short story.
Yeah.
As well.
But Frank is the guy that he meets at the construction site. But anyway, Frank introduces him to this little shanty town where they live for a little while. And there's some weird stuff going on with one of the guys who helps run the shanty town.
Brings food.
Right. And Nada notices that across the street there's a church, and there's like some suspicious activity going on at the church. So he goes over to the church and finds out that the songs that they're hearing from outside the church are not actually being sung by like a church choir. It's an audio recording, and it's a bunch of scientists having secret meetings in the church, and they have made this technology in the form of these sunglasses that reveal that there are humanoid robot guys living among humans. And when Nada grabs a pair of sunglasses and puts them on, he can see what people around him are the robots. And also he can see in all of the advertisements, all of the newspapers, every bit of media, shopping bags, like everything has all of these messages on them that just say shit like consume, buy, produce, reproduce, be happy, like all of these just like subliminal messages that are very clearly saying like upkeep the status quo basically. And when Nada sees this, he freaks out and gets attention from the robot people who realize that he can see them, and he drags Frank into it. Frank does not want to be dragged into it. There's a whole like 5-minute scene of them fighting because Nada just wants him to put the fucking glasses on, and he won't do it. But the fighting scene is so long, and it literally could have just been replaced with a sex scene, to be honest.
Absolutely. I mean, halfway through, that's kind of what I expected to happen.
Right. It was all right, just kiss already.
Kept kneeing him in the balls.
Right. I was like, at one point he's like thrusting. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you just like turned off the visuals and just listened,
right, it would literally just be a sex scene. But yeah, so basically, Nada has now this whole thing that he brings Frank into, and now they have to disrupt the status quo, and they find the scientists again. And the scientists have new technology that are contact lenses instead of the sunglasses, so that they're less easily identified. But basically, they're just working against the system that is too powerful.
Yeah. No, that pretty much sums it up. But yeah, so this movie was based off of a 1963 science fiction short story called 8 O'Clock in the Morning. Written by Ray Nielsen. I downloaded it and skimmed through it, and it's pretty much similar to the plot. Like, it basically, the short story doesn't really have a lot of detail. It's basically about a guy who like goes to like a hypnosis show,
Ooh, that's kind of different.
Yeah, no, it's they change a lot. He goes to a hypnosis show, and basically it's like at the end of it, the hypnotist goes, and then you will be awake. And then once he's awoken, he can see all the creatures.
So it's like not scientist technology.
Yeah, it's not science technology. It's like a psychological awakening, and then it's kind of him just like running around, kind of doing like the short story is basically the scene where he puts on the glasses for the first time in the movie, where he's like kind of running around going like, what's going on? But he doesn't like go around shooting people. He's just kind of like trying to convince people that like, hey, there's like, we're being controlled. There's creatures, and all this stuff. And yeah, this I've lied to a lot of people about seeing this movie. As far as like John Carpenter wise, we got the pleasure of getting to see it in a theater.
Yeah.
It was like a special like 4K showing. I really like seeing older movies in theaters.
Yeah, it's really fun.
It's a lot of fun. I want to see fucking Alien in a theater.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
In high school, there's like a theater. There was like a community theater thing in high school that was free. They showed a free movie every Tuesday. And I remember one year on Halloween they were going to show Alien, and I really wanted to see it. And I didn't get to fucking go. And like something came up, and it would have been awesome. But yeah, no. With this, I've got a lot of things to say about this movie. But I want to hear what you think. Did you like it? Was there anything you didn't like about it? What did you think of Roddy Piper? What did you think of? What are some kind of just standout things about it? And also, what's your opinion of John Carpenter in general so far, like with the movies you've seen of his?
So, I definitely, off the bat, for sure prefer The Thing to this movie. I do like, one thing I did really like about this movie was, wow, I just blanked. What do I like about this movie?
A character, the themes. It was kind of funny. It was kind of goofy. It had like there was some fun little like humorous parts. Go ahead.
Yeah. I thought that the messaging, like what he was seeing with the glasses on, was really heavy-handed and funny. There was nothing subtle about it, which I think was kind of fun. I also, when watching it, the scene that stuck out the most to me was when the government swoops in because they are trying to upkeep the status quo of the robots.
Swoops into the church.
No, not the church.
Oh, it's a different
when
scene?
they swoop in and demolish the shantytown.
Mm-hmm.
That scene really stuck out to me because when we watched it, later on you find out that most of the people in that little encampment are not actually like unhoused people. Like it was a front, and most of them are scientists, because we see them later and they're scientists in the later meetup in the warehouse. But watching that scene and watching like the police descend on this unhoused encampment, I realized that I'd never once seen that depicted in a movie before. The way that the government, and particularly the police, are used to literally demolish people's lives.
To just wash the poor people out.
Right. And that is something that
people who literally already have nothing, we're going to take away their nothing.
Right. Especially when, like, presumably those people are not doing anything quote unquote bad.
Just trying to live.
Right. And so that scene really stuck out to me because I've never seen that in a movie before.
Eating 3 meals and sleeping in a sleeping bag.
Right. I've just never seen that in a movie before, and I feel like it's just one of those things that even the most like well-meaning person doesn't think about. Is like what happens to unhoused people. And in the city we currently live in, it's something I've noticed here a lot, where I know of certain areas that have unhoused encampments, and I've like driven by them, and then one day I've driven by it and it's been gone. And just like the way that we as a society just like demolish the shit out of people's lives for no reason, like that scene just really stuck out to me because it's a really long scene.
Yeah.
It's like a 5-minute scene of like bulldozers and people being pushed to the ground and like police brutality. And so that was interesting, especially for such an older movie, to have such a long scene that depicted that happening, because I've never seen it before in a movie. But yeah, that really stuck out to me. I also think that John Carpenter, especially in this movie, just like doesn't know when to end a scene.
He likes his long scenes.
Yeah, like on a lighter note, he just does not know when to stop, because the fight scene between Nada and Frank was so long, and it reminded me a lot of the beginning scene of The Thing, when it's the dog running through the snow,
running from the helicopter,
right? And that scene,
which you felt bad for the first time we watched.
Well, right, because it's a dog, and you know I love dogs, but that scene is so long, and it, like, I just feel like he doesn't. As much as I like a lot of the visuals in They Live and in The Thing, I just feel like his pacing is not it for me personally. Like, that man does not know how to pace a movie. Because, like, what in your brain would make you think, let me make this alleyway fight scene last 5 minutes? That's just crazy.
Yeah. I get what you're saying. No, he definitely, like, likes to really draw things out. I mean, did my iPad die? Yes, it did. Well, hopefully I remember everything I was going to talk about. Yeah, like, it almost kind of makes me think of, like, there's some really, really legendary long scenes in some of his movies, or at least that I can think about. Like, there's, I told you about the movie Starman, which basically, like, Starman is about this alien that comes down to Earth and takes the form of this woman's dead husband, like
That's so weird.
The physical shape. Like, he crashes, like, outside of her house, takes the form of her dead husband, and there's a scene where he's just, like, him, the alien. She's passed out because she saw her dead husband come back to life. And him, the alien, is just walking around the house naked. And he's, like, kind of expressionless. And he's kind of, like, just trying to figure out, like, how to use things. Like, he finds a gun, and he kind of picks up the gun, like, and he's holding it, like, you know, he's kind of, like, holding it daintily like this, like, not sure what to do with it. And then the TV's on, and he sees, like, a cowboy show on the TV, so then he puts it, you know, right, and, you know, he's, like, walking around, and it's, like, a long scene where he's just, like, and I feel like John Carpenter is the kind of filmmaker that really, I think a big benefit of it is that, at least the movies that I've seen of his, you really get a good sense of the world, and it really makes you feel, it can really help you kind of get sucked into what's going on, because you get a good sense of environment. Like, in this movie, I feel like I got a good sense of the layout of the encampment and the church and stuff, and, like, I kind of got a good feeling of, like, where things were in relation to everything. And, like, I think about something like Halloween, you know, for example, whereas, like, the second half of Halloween is pretty much Michael Myers going through and killing people, like, killing a bunch of people in this one neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's a similar thing. It's like you spend a lot of repeated time in individual rooms in all these houses and the yards and stuff, to the point where, like, I've got a really good mental map of, like, how this neighborhood is laid out and stuff. And I think that's something that John Carpenter, in The Thing, I have a mental image of how the station is laid out, and I feel like that's something that John Carpenter is really strong with. And as far as, like, this movie, I had a really interesting experience, because I thought, while watching this movie, I kind of thought, oh no, Courtney's gonna hate this. Because I feel like my pessimistic 2023 brain kind of took a lot of the things in this movie and thought, like, this is gonna get, like, Fight Clubbed, or, like, this is gonna get Jokered, as far as, or this movie, or where, like, people are going to take the wrong things from this movie, because there's something about this movie that inherently bothered me as a black man.
Yeah.
As far as, like, and there's a thing now with, like, me watching movies today where it's like, when I was a young film bro, I always try to think of movies as, like, oh, I have to look at movies objectively.
No.
I have to look at movies with, like, zero perspective in mind, because movies can be objectively or subjective, or only objectively good or bad. And now
that's just wrong.
It is wrong. But now when I watch movies, like, I kind of think, well, you know, like all art depending on your perspective, art can mean different things, you know? And I think that I was pretty thrown off by the fact that, like, things only got serious and action only happened when a white man, a big, strong, buff, dumb, meathead white man figured out what was going on. And things started happening to him. And, and only when, and not only that, but, like, it took the destruction of the home of, like, dozens, if not hundreds, of homeless people.
Yeah.
And it took magic sunglasses and it took, like, all of this shit to get him to just realize, like, oh, society might be bad. To realize, like, oh, like, Reagan, like, American economics might be bad. You know, because early on in the movie, like, I distinctly remember, you know,
he's a bootlicker.
Yeah, he's a bootlicker 100%. Like, early on in the movie, he's talking to Keith David about, like, you know, Keith David's basically telling him, like, listen, it's, like, rigged against us, you know?
Yeah.
Like, unless you have, like, a good setup, like, there's no way that you can make it. And, you know, Roddy Piper's like, well, I believe in America.
Right, and it's
You
like,
know?
all right.
Yeah. And then once he puts in the glass mirror, it's like, oh, no, everything is kind of a setup. And that's another thing, too. Now, after reading interviews with John Carpenter and stuff and seeing his perspective, it's like, I get the metaphor as far as, like, yeah, the rich are, like, are actively, like keeping us kind of boxed in and dumb and, like, consuming media in order to control us and keep us poor and keep us doing shit, right? Like, you know, like that. Like, yes, I understand that, like, oh, it's kind of like if some race of aliens came down and did it. But I kind of thought it was like, this can definitely, I can see, like, a QAnon type person or, like, a conspiracy theory type, like, person watch this and take it in a bad way. And I was fucking right about it, because one of the first like, on Wikipedia, and, like, a little thing, apparently since, like, the dawn of the internet, or since people started talking about movies on the internet, like, up until 2017-ish, which is when John Carpenter actually had a public response to this, a lot of kind of, like, incel neo-Nazi forums online, yeah, you know this is going, thought that this movie was a metaphor for, like, Jewish people controlling the world.
Oh.
And, like, that is the thing. It's like Jewish people are kind of feeding us.
It's the globalist mindset.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's, like, you know, and there was, like, basically all these online forums, people talking about, like, yeah, that's what it means. You know, we got to rise up. And I kind of thought about that when, like, yeah, no, if, like, I can totally see some QAnon dude watching this movie and watching Roddy Piper being a big badass, shooting people in the bank and being like, I'm here to kick ass and chew bubble gum, and take all that and just see it in such a wrong way.
Yeah.
And really joke. And they did. And, yeah, so John Carpenter in 2017 in an interview basically, like, stated irrefutably, like, this movie has nothing to do, like, it's not about anything like that. Those people are dumb. And he pretty much said this movie is a critique on Reaganomics. Yeah. Like, right. And that's it, you know? So, yeah, like, for the movie, for what it is and what I know that John Carpenter's trying to say, like, I really enjoy that. I think it's unfortunate that people can take the wrong messages from it. You know, but I think it's like any movie like this, you can take it wrong. Like, I was thinking about Joker a lot. Yeah. The whole time where I was watching, it was like people totally took Joker politically, took the wrong messages from that.
Right. Because the message of Joker was that disenfranchised groups have no choice but to remain disenfranchised. Yeah. And people did not take it that way. Yeah. People took it to an edgelord way.
Exactly. I really want to watch Fight Club with you and do a Fight Club episode.
I think that'd be good, because
I think it's the same kind of thing. And Dark Knight's almost the opposite as far as,
my god.
Yeah.
I did want to say that I think that is a good point to bring to this movie, as far as, like, personally, I feel like that kind of misunderstanding is what happens when you are a white man making a movie with no outside perspective. Like, it can be interpreted incorrectly. Because honestly, like, watching the movie, Frank, so obviously there are casualties to this white man finding out the truth. Like, he causes irrefutable damage to the community that he is joining. Like, Frank dies. Like, and it's interesting that the one black main character dies as a result of the white man finally waking the fuck up. You know? So I feel like it is interesting that the movie is like, he couldn't believe that the world was rigged until he saw it himself, because he couldn't see from other people's perspectives who are telling him firsthand, no, the world sucks. Like, this black man is telling him, like, no, like, system is not meant for me. And he's like, oh yeah, like, he doesn't believe him.
Hard.
Right. And I feel like that's indicative of the world we're still in, where people who are not marginalized refuse to accept that marginalized communities experience something different than them, and instead just say a bunch of bootlicker shit until something bad happens to them. Because Roddy Piper's character in the beginning is literally unemployed and has had to be homeless and travel to a new state to find work, but still believes in the American dream.
Mm-hmm.
Like, wake the fuck up.
Yeah. Beyond him just, like, being white, the fact that he has the privilege to, like, one, being just physically healthy enough to be able to just literally, I'm just gonna walk to LA.
Right, and he also doesn't have a family to worry about.
Yeah.
Like, he has nothing tying him down as far as, like, well, if I leave, my child's gonna starve to death.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they never tell us he has a family. Although it very well could be just like you find out afterwards, like, oh yeah, he had like 2 kids and a wife back in Colorado or from Canada.
Well, and Frank repeatedly tells him, like, I have a family that I'm sending money back to. Like, I have a family that I'm doing all of this for. And Nada literally fucks his life up and, like, makes him look through the glasses, even though he is repeatedly telling him, no, like, I have shit I need to do. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that is also just, like, emblematic of the fact that there's a lot more holding down a black man versus a white man in today's society. Mm-hmm. And Frank is bringing all of that to Nada and being like, I can't do this right now. Like, I am disenfranchised. And Nada's like, nah, man, just do this. Just put the glasses on, and then Frank dies. Like, the thing that Frank was worried about happened. And it's like no skin off of Nada's bones, you know? Like, it's just like those kind of casualties are acceptable because it's in response to a white man finally being enlightened, you know?
No, definitely, like, yeah, those aspects of this movie haven't aged well, and I kind of agree with you in that, like, that's part of what makes a lot of these movies get misinterpreted in that way, for sure.
Yeah, because if you had a more diverse group of people that you're pulling ideas from and, like, listening to for feedback on movies, on your plot, you know, like, if you're a white man writing a movie and you have a multicultural, diverse group of people that you're running the movie by before, like, you know, finishing it up, you would have all these perspectives that would say, ooh, I could see how this could be interpreted incorrectly, or, oh, here's, like, a really important cultural aspect you're missing. Mm-hmm. And it's, like, part of the reason why diversity in media and diversity in art is especially important, because if it's just a room full of white men, they literally have nothing new to bring to the table. Mm-hmm.
It's a completely different genre, completely different, like, form of entertainment. I think that's one of the things that's so good about Big Mouth.
Yeah. As
far as, like, Big Mouth and Human Resources, the show, like, which Nick Kroll is, like, the creator of the series, and it's, like, primarily based around him, but, like, he has an extremely diverse team of writers and comedians working on that show.
Yeah.
To like give all sorts of different perspectives on like what puberty and like what growing up is like for, everyone of different like, genders and, races and whatnot.
And in human resources, what all of those different perspectives are like as adults, which I think is really interesting. Like in human resources, especially, like I can relate to that one more as an adult person now. But there's characters that are disabled. There's characters of many different races, of many different like life experiences, people who have lost family members. Like there's a wide variety of human experiences, which I think that in the past and also currently, this is still happening, particularly white male movie writers and directors have been too ambitious in their own definition of like what is the human experience. As far as like white men have forever just like categorized the human experience as just their experience. Like the human experience to them is the same as the white male experience, which is why so many aspects of media are like, this is what it's like to be human, but really what they mean to say is this is what it's like to be a white man.
This was like to be a poor white man.
Right. Or even a rich white man or whatever.
Yes.
Like most of the time movies and TV shows and stuff are centered around people who are financially stable.
That's true. Yeah. And aren't things so hard for me?
Right. Which that's a perspective, but the fact that it's every perspective in every movie is a bit much. And so, yeah, I agree that, like, obviously very different genres and like, a totally different format of visual media. But, like, it is really nice to watch something like Human Resources or Big Mouth where, like, the characters all have something different that they're bringing to the table. Because that more accurately represents the human experience than something that is just White Man, the movie.
Yeah. A lot of them end up being. Yeah. Any final thoughts on They Live?
I liked the robot design. I thought they were creepy.
The creatures.
I thought they were cool. I thought that the imagery was pretty heavy-handed. As far as like all of the signs being like consume, obey, like shit like that. And then just the fact that it's just White Man in America, the movie. I feel like a modern spin to it would be kind of cool. Like a remake. I don't know if they've done that or not.
Yeah, that was one of the things I was going to bring up as far as like and it was on the Wikipedia page. There was a planned adaptation. It was going to be a new adaptation of the original story of 8 o'clock in the morning. So like it probably wasn't going to have like the glasses and stuff. And it was by a filmmaker that I thought was a really interesting choice. And if I get to it.
That was another point I meant to make about the technology of the sunglasses and then the contact lenses. I thought it was also interesting that this story didn't even take place in the perspective of a scientist. Like, literally this white man came in, did no work whatsoever toward the cause, and then benefited from the change. Like, he didn't even make the glasses. He didn't even talk with anyone who made the glasses.
That's true.
He stole the glasses. He stole the technology from scientists who were trying to do something, and then exposed them by acting weird out in public.
Exactly.
And then got a black man killed.
Made things worse, yeah. He was pretty much the whole reason that they came in, wiped him out, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I found the thing. In 2010, a remake movie was stated to be in development with Carpenter in a producing role. In 2011, Matt Reeves is the director and writer of The Batman, Robert Pattinson Batman,
yeah.
and the new Planet of the Apes trilogy. And yeah, it was going to be it was going to be more of a readaptation of the original short story, 8 o'clock in the morning, which it would be a serious take. I feel like if you were to do a modern day adaptation of this, it would have to be like, well, not necessarily. It would be a more serious take. You could do like a satirical kind of thing, or I feel like you could go a route where it's like something like Don't Look Up,
Yeah.
Where it's like very kind of heavy-handed and like obvious, like, hey, this is what's going on.
I think I'd rather it be more serious.
Yeah, if you try to make it another satirical thing again, I think it would have a similar response that Don't Look Up had, as far as like everyone just be like, well, this is stupid and like heavy-handed. But yeah, like a serious kind of like more dark version of it would be pretty cool.
Yeah,
and I feel like Matt Reeves is a good filmmaker to do it too, because he also directed Cloverfield, the original Cloverfield. And I feel like between that, and the Batman has things with this too, but like between that and Planet of the Apes, he definitely is familiar with having like a critique on the way the world works. I know that's kind of broad, but as far as like, you know, the Batman has like some light things in there as far as like critiquing kind of Bruce Wayne's exploits, is like, you know, you could do a lot more by just like donating a bunch of money to charities or whatever, you know?
Yeah, instead of being a freaky basement man.
Yeah, instead of eating your blackberries in the dark.
Right.
You know? Yeah, but so he's not a terrible choice. But yeah, I could see them doing a remake, yeah. I think for me with this movie, I thought Roddy Piper was really funny in it.
Yeah, he had a lot of funny lines.
Some of his delivery and some of his stuff, like he was a very easy protagonist to follow. Like he was just such a he was such a
man.
He was such a man. And at the beginning, when he was like shirtless doing the construction work, my lord, him and Keith David.
Oh yeah,
both
the sexual tension was off the charts.
So hot. But yeah, no. Trying to think. Yeah, really excited to watch more John Carpenter. I really want to watch Big Trouble in Little China. That's another. It's kind of more of his like lighter films. That's one that I've also lied to a lot of people about seeing. So there's a big list of movies that like I have lied to a lot of people about. Like up until like a month ago, I didn't see Titanic. Hadn't seen.
You're
Titanic.
welcome.
Yeah, thank you. It was great. Really, I get why it's like the best movie, the highest grossing film ever. Anyway, yeah, I think unless there's anything else, I think that might wrap up this episode.
Yeah, I think the only thing I want to mention is that this is the Midnight Movie Club, and it is now it's about midnight.
It's past
it's midnight 20.
It's midnight 21. Yeah, so it's officially the Midnight Movie Club.
And I'm tired.
I'm tired too. I think next time we're probably going to talk Five Nights at Freddy's comes out this weekend.
Can't wait.
Although it might be more apt, Priscilla comes out the following weekend.
Can't wait.
We're definitely doing an episode on Priscilla.
We'll do an episode on both.
Yo, we got to do Priscilla versus like the movie Elvis.
But I can't sit through Elvis.
Well, no, we watched half of it.
Then I got the gist.
Yeah, you already know. We know what happened in real life. So.
Can we watch it on like 3x speed?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, now all we have to do is just watch the second half of Elvis.
Let's just watch Jack White as Elvis in that scene in Dewey Cox, and then call that Elvis
for 3 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be more entertaining than watching Elvis.
Where was Jack White's Oscar nomination?
Facts, because that was perfect.
I really wanted Austin Butler to win just to hear his speech.
We'll hear it in Dune.
Thank you very much for thank you very much, Denis Villeneuve. Yeah, no, so that wraps it up. Have a nice night, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.
So, here we go. It was filled with child expectations and complexes which the police are searching for James Thomas, believed to be the lover of Dave Williams, and her partner in the horrible murder of Walter. Grant everybody that I'm here to hold on. Oh, please tell me where this is going. Please tell me. Sorry, I don't know. How could I got in here? Please take us to Albany on 6 o'clock train tonight. What do you think? Special agent, special agent.